Well, we're ready for another special edition of Office Hours with the Orlando Magic. I've got my good friend, someone I talk to probably every day now. I don't know that he loves that as much as I do, but we have
I do.
Jeff Nelson from Navigate. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So in Milwaukee, I'm here in Orlando, two different climates. How's the weather? We doing okay?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's probably like low 40s, which is balmy. There is still snow on the ground, but all things considered, it is not bad.
Not too bad at all. Not too bad. Well, we want to hear a lot about how you're doing and obviously working from home, as I know, and you can tell I am as well. But before we get there, start really from the top level. Tell us about Navigate. Tell us about your role and really what the group does.
Yeah, appreciate it. So I'm the president of Navigate, and we are in essence a agency that is looking to give sports executives like yourself clarity and confidence on big decisions. And the way we do that is really this foundation of research data and analytics, and then overlaying that with consulting. And so that can apply to anything from jersey patches to partnership strategy to fan research on the property side, or on the brand side, partnership strategy. How are we investing? Who are we targeting? Is this working? And then we also work for media companies, agencies, pretty much anyone and everyone in the business.
Well connected, right? And I can tell you from our perspective, and working with you all, that started because there's several teams that we trust that have had experiences with your team and spoke highly of you. So it's you all do a very good job. How'd you get there? I think from a career perspective, we often like sharing that. The president of this company that is, like I said, well connected. How did you get there?
Yeah, hard work and dumb luck, I think, is probably the combination. But I was a sports writer out of college and worked in the newspaper business for about 5 years, and decided maybe this isn't the most stable industry to be in long term, and always was really interested in the business side of sports as well. Went back to school for a master's in sports administration. That was at Northwestern, and networked like crazy everywhere and anywhere I could. 100 cold emails probably. And it's amazing when you're a student how many breakfasts or coffees you can end up getting, as long as you tell people that you're just looking to pick their brain, right? And over the course of that, I assumed, like a lot of people, I think, I want to go work for a team. But the more people I talked to and the more I shared my interests, the more people thought, you might be interested in the agency side where you can kind of have a diverse set of experiences. And oh, by the way, there's this guy in Chicago here named AJ Maestas who started this company Navigate a few years ago. You should really meet him. And so I did, and about 11 plus years ago, actually started as an intern when we were, 4 or 5 people. And not that we're all that much bigger now, closer to 15 to 20, but it just allowed me to kind of get in early and have my fingerprints on everything and kind of work my way up over the years. So the story I tell people is, or the lesson I try to impart for all the students who would be watching this, is that there's definitely no one path, right, to any job. It's really about networking and pursuing what interests you, and then of course working your butt off.
So I love this. So there's so much there. 2 things to hit on: intern to president, incredible, and I love that. We actually, our president of business operations, Charlie Freeman, same thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's 2 great paths. And we share the sports journalism thing, right? That is what I went to school for, Springfield College, and thought sports journalism was it. But do you find yourself, tell me if you agree with this, because I draw back to it all the time in what I do today. It's storytelling, and it's the opportunity to articulate that in from a sales perspective or a marketing perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, no matter what you're trying to achieve, ultimately, if you need other people to buy into it, you need to have a good narrative to bring to them. And so for us, especially, we're gathering all this data and this research, and it's really a lot like journalism where you're gathering facts, and then you have to pull out, well, what matters here most, and I'm going to start with that. And that's really how we try to build our decks, our deliverables, and it's how we try to counsel clients. I mean, start with what matters most and then peel back the curtain on everything behind it. But that storytelling, you're spot on, is so key no matter what role you're in.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, I use the word navigate a lot, so that's going to have to be excused here because I am giving you plugs, but I truly use it. How is navigating the process? Like I said, we're both working from home. I think when we were in All-Star in person, we both had shorter hair last year.
We did. I'm very self-conscious about the world seeing my COVID hair, but yeah. By the way, there is I think it's a 25-cent royalty on every time you say
Every
navigate.
time.
Yeah, so let's just keep that counter in mind. Yeah, the pandemic. We did see each other a couple times right before, but for us, and I almost feel a little sheepish saying this, it's really only accentuated probably the need for what we do, and so we haven't had to have any furloughs or layoffs, which I'm so grateful to say, and we really have kind of adjusted and rallied our business around everybody being from home. How do we shift the relationship building we do? How do we shift how we deliver work, how we win work? But I think in terms of our value proposition to the industry, it was recognized almost right away that on the brand side, we got called in on a lot of emergency assignments to help look at what kind of value maybe they were losing, or if they were being told, hey, we got to cut 20 million from our budget, which 20 million do we cut? They wanted a data-driven approach, right? They don't want to just say, well, I love JT, so I'm keeping the magic. Bob at this team I don't like as much, so I'm going to cut that. They wanted to look at it objectively, right? And so that's where we can help. And then on the team side, really evaluating everything from how do we keep our partners happy, or how do we make up for some of this potential lost revenue, to a lot of fan research. We've done a lot of market research for teams, for media companies. Really proud to say we do quite a bit of work right now with Populous, who is building or helping teams manage venues. What's going to make people comfortable coming back? How many people plan to come back? When? What do they need? There's been a lot of that kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of the sports fan out there throughout. So it's been a really, really interesting 10 months, 11 months now of work.
And you all are, the entire Navigate group, everybody's working from home.
That is correct. Yeah. So we already had pretty liberal policies about working from home, working remotely. I mean, our main office is in Chicago. As you said, I'm in Milwaukee, moved back here, originally from here a few years ago. But I think that did tee us up to more easily make that transition. But we also immediately implemented a lot of things to make sure our culture and our tight-knit feel could be kept alive. A lot of virtual happy hours. Is this a PG webinar? Should I not swear? Probably. It's
more of a 13,
called,
PG-13.
Yeah. Shoot the blank Mondays, where we all over lunch, instead of people just eating lunch in their home by themselves, right? Even across some time zones, we would have our Zoom up and just let people kind of shoot the blank, or have the water cooler talk, or whatever you would normally have in the office. So there's a laundry list that I'd love to brag about, but in the interest of time, it's been a big adjustment, but our team has really really all come together and come up with ways to make sure we kind of still have that family feel.
Yeah, we could see it. I mean, from the outside looking in and knowing you all enough, you could see the culture's still there, and what you all do from the Zoom perspective. I do like the Monday campaign you just mentioned. It's just keeping people attached and feeling like you're a team. And we all miss those high five moments, as they call them, right in the hallways. And
Yeah.
you never knew. I guess we did know how special that was, especially when you have a great team like you guys do, and I feel we do. Um, but we're all getting by, right? We're making it happen and finding a way.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a similar culture. You guys have a lot of fun too. I don't need to call out any examples specifically because I think a lot of them have been at your expense, but there have been some great Zoom backgrounds to kind
Yeah,
of
sports
have
teams and
fun.
yeah,
Yeah, during our weekly calls.
yeah,
So I see it on your end too.
yeah. Well, so as you go back then to the position that Navigate has played, it sounds like it's almost enhanced during this time frame where there is more scrutiny at the brand level for sure on what are we spending. And I like some of the way you put it, right? How do I have to cut back? How do I do that with some intelligence behind it? Think about that in general, and it maybe even broader than that. Is there anything that you all have worked on that has surprised you, perhaps on where brands are finding more value, or some of the studies you've done that may have manifested in ways that you didn't expect to?
Yeah, that's a great question. The surprise that I've seen is probably less actually in the data and more in the fact that um, everybody in the industry has kind of rallied around each other. And so, you should probably actually add on to this, but um, knowing how much pressure there were on the brand side from a lot of C-suite executives to people who are in charge of things like partnership budgets. We wondered if you'd have more people just, hey, force majeure, we're out, right? Nothing you can do. We're cutting this much, it's over. And we were even hired, right? I said earlier, to take a look at some of those things. If I have to cut, what do I cut? But more often it's been, well, maybe I reduce, but I don't want to burn a bridge. I know that this guy's in another tough spot too. And so from a strategy end, a lot of the data work became less around necessarily wholesale cuts and more around what's working for us and what's not, because we want to still maintain the relationship. We still see value in these partnerships. We still want to use them. We just need to be a little more laser focused.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you and I have talked about it too, and just being humble, right? Where we were a little nervous as a property going into a position, whereas there's not a lot of leverage, but there's opportunity and relationships there that we hope will be strong enough to figure out a way to drive both of our needs, right? From our sense, moving a business forward, from the partner sense, making sure they're getting what they need to get in their investment from us. And it's been wild. I think we've been blessed. I would share that it's more positive than anything in terms of how brands have really pivoted or again navigated how they get through it all. So, I mean, I guess I would ask you to share your perspective then on it now that we've really been put to the test, 10, 11 months, whatever this has been now, where spending for brands especially has been scrutinized again. Give us your sense of, they have the ability to spend mass media, TV, traditional, wherever that might be, very one-to-one digital. And then there's this sports partnership that we
Yeah.
do. Where does sports partnership fit for you in terms of the hierarchy of effectiveness and other things?
Yeah. I mean, the answer, it depends, is not one anybody ever likes to hear, but it really depends on where you kind of are in your objectives and the life cycle of your brand and what you're trying to do with marketing this year. And so sports partnerships play a role unquestionably. It should all be a mix, and it's just a matter of, again, what you're trying to achieve. And so one thing I would say is if you're talking about a newer, let's say it's a fintech company in a crowded space where they're raising a lot of money, but you need to break through the clutter. You need people to become aware of you. You're trying to build a user base for the first time. Sports partnerships are a phenomenal platform to break through the clutter and make people aware and reach them, right? And not only reach them, but impact them, because you might be able to drive awareness, right? You could spend 6 million on a Super Bowl commercial and reach a big audience and get some initial awareness, but you don't have as much opportunity to engage them and to repeatedly engage them so that you actually get somebody to go to your app or download it or sign up or just look into it, right? So I think in that case, it's great. Now, if you're a gigantic established brand, they are more often than not, I think, trying to pivot to interesting digital social engagement and trying to figure out, okay, we don't need the big sign in the stadium anymore. Maybe everybody knows us. And so in that case, the sports partnership can still play a huge role, but it needs to be with a property who gets that and is nimble with them and is coming up with a new creative way to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And I think there are numerous examples of properties like yourself that are doing it, right? But the ones that aren't are where I think you see brands shifting dollars to, okay, well, we could be laser focused through some Facebook campaign. And so maybe we shift some dollars there.
You've talked about, and I think you kind of touched on it here too. I think the way you've put it to me in the past is your all's view of sports partnerships, again, is an efficient way to package a bunch of different things, whether it is digital or that could be one-to-one marketing, I guess. Heavy brand awareness from high visibility, we hope DVR, fast forward proof, signage and branding and other things. Does that still ring true today?
Yeah, no question. And I think it's a one-stop shop to have a bunch of different platforms through the team to achieve different things. And then again, you'll hear me use the term nimble or flexible all the time, but if you can shift that year to year, all the better. But yeah, no question. I mean, a partner that can work with your digital social folks on what they want to do in that space, work with your hospitality folks on what they want to do there, potentially plug in even to your RSN partner and figure out through the broadcast, what can we do? You can start to check a lot of boxes in creative ways, all through, potentially one deal.
Yeah, right on. Well, think about a lot of the innovation you've seen, all different sports, trying a lot of different things, maybe learning from each other too, as the NHL gets going here this past week, as we're recording this. You're seeing more branding on the uniform, in their case, the helmets, but a lot of new signage in the fan lists, or a little bit less fans in some areas like us. We are hosting fans. Most buildings are not, but anything that stands out that you, whether you liked or just thought was creative, or maybe a best practice that you've seen?
Yeah, I think what I liked right from the get-go, I think probably the first big tournament or broadcast during the pandemic was MLS, and they had those giant digital boards behind, and they kept it pretty clean. And I think, right, you have seen most leagues have an eye toward how can we get more partners visible while still keeping it relatively clean. And the good thing about that is that if you're an established brand, remaining top of mind right now is more important than ever, especially as consumers' purchasing behavior has now shifted dramatically. You need to make sure in some form or fashion you stay top of mind. In one example, if you think about how often maybe you order groceries now instead of going to the grocery store, you can't have an end cap anymore to impact somebody as much, or you can, but they're not going to the grocery store as much. So the ability to stay top of mind, and then when they log on to buy their groceries, hopefully that carries through. That's important. And then, as I said earlier, the new brands, right? If you're emerging, the ability to, in this unique moment, have a new asset that catches somebody's eye, that's great, because the downside to TV exposure is kind of the wallpaper effect, where if there's something that people are just so used to seeing that's always there, it always has been, maybe they don't notice it quite as much. Well, now you have inventory that stands out.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed this too. It's some of the opportunities to really break in, right? And maybe there's a category that's emerged heavily because of the pandemic, and our behaviors have all shifted. You've kind of alluded to, I think, just there, at least you made me think of direct to consumer, and
Yeah.
all those folks not going to the grocery store, it's coming to them. That's been a nice, I think, shift in mindset of there's these emerging categories that could use a partnership, could use a navigate to help them understand and see the value and where that's going, because there's a lot of them opening up, a lot of brands starting. How do you be that brand that takes off and is here long term? So yeah, I could see the value of how you all could help them also piece together the right areas to be, the right assets to help get going, and certainly, back to the question of innovation of new signage and whatnot. Those are things, there people are seeing them, and you're seeing some brands that you haven't seen before, in
Yep.
my opinion, that are now on the radar, and it's part of a, there's a trust level. Again, when you do a partnership, it gives that level of equity, to, especially to a startup brand that's new to the market.
Yeah, no question. I think
Yeah.
you're right. I've seen a lot of new ones come in, and um, I don't want to sound like I'm saying that signage is the end all be all, because there have been virtual fan experiences. There have been a lot of other innovative ways properties have tried to engage fans during this. And I think that that's also been a huge positive. So I think you're right. And then we're in the process right now with a lot of clients of starting to really dive deep. How much did these various things move the needle? So I can't tell you right now that it's all working necessarily, but hopefully in short order, I can give you a little more perspective on that.
Yeah, right on. Well, what beyond working for brands? I know we've talked about that quite a bit. What are some of the priorities right now for Navigate? Things you were looking at? We've talked a lot about consumption of games on TV versus OTT, things of that nature. Where's some of your focuses right now?
Yeah, there are a few different areas where this year we're going to put out some thought leadership, and we're kind of commissioning our own research. One of those is probably not a surprise, that's sports betting.
Mhm.
I think we know that's going to have a massive influence on sports and entertainment, and on fandom and consumption and broadcast. So trying to continue to explore that space, even as it's only legalized in a certain number of states. Couple of emerging categories that I mentioned earlier. One was fintech. The other is CBD. I'm really interested to see how perceptions of CBD are evolving, and how leagues are going to start to treat that as a potential category. And then I would say our biggest area of focus in the last 18 months that we're continuing to do more work on is Gen Z, because I think almost, I'm curious for your thoughts on this too, but I feel like almost everyone in sports initially, and we're probably going back 10 years now, but initially was caught a little off guard with how different millennials were than previous generations, and felt like they were playing catch up a little bit on understanding millennials. And so Gen Z now already, we're seeing some pretty drastic differences. And it's just the rate of change of your daily life and how technology influences it. But we want to help the industry, and of course our clients, feel like they are not caught off guard, that they are learning about Gen Z in real time as it matures and as it evolves on that sports fandom side.
Yeah, it's such a big discussion, right? I think it's hard to really, thread a needle through one thing of how that works and how it could work for all of us. But you're speaking to so many different, I guess, demographics or consumer behaviors, right? And I think on the brand side, it's great because they're typically going to try to really focus in on one priority. This is the segment. This is the group. We want to go after them. We're going to catch other people just naturally, but we want to win this, and they can go very narrowly focused. Where on the property side, I don't want to say it's really different, but in a sense, we do have to be kind of, all things to everybody. Like, we want everyone that has any type of opportunity to have an experience with us and the Magic brand to be able to do that. So I think we're still very much trying to understand that. I can call back to we should have had our NBA league meetings in person this week. Actually, we can't do that because of what we're living with. But last year, I can recall us having this very conversation as a league, and it being one of the priority ones to think about the in arena experience. Is
Yeah,
that something, right, that the next level of consumers and fans and generation want to do? We know the stats behind how many or how few, I guess I would say, when you think about the global fan, right, and how many people are fans of the NBA, that's such a small percentage that can ever actually go to a game, which we
right.
want to change, and we're working on that. But the experience that we've set up, you think about who's it geared for, and it's maybe not always geared for that young Gen Z and what they're looking for. And we're seeing a lot of arenas, venues change and teams change for that. I think MLB has done a really good job with these more community spaces that are inviting people to more come out to the event. And oh, by the way, there's a baseball game.
Right.
But it pulls them in as a fan and a consumer. And I love it. I think I could tell you, proud to be in the NBA of all team, or excuse me, leagues. The leadership there has been focused on this to the point of last year in our league meetings. We spent a lot of time talking about it. But even at the Magic, proud to be part of this group that is looking at, okay, whoever's walking in our building, whoever's consuming us on digital, consuming us on our friends at Sinclair and formerly Fox Sports Florida, are we doing enough, right, to appeal to everybody and be where consumers are? So it's a broad topic. It's a broad way to approach it
Yeah.
in that sense as well. But yeah, it's important. It's important to understand there is a change for sure.
And it's really hard for leadership at properties for some of the reasons you outlined, because if you think about game presentation and you're able to do something that you know will appeal to 100 young fans who are going to come once a year and buy a $20 ticket, but you're right in the wheelhouse of when they will or won't become a fan, right? But doing that will also upset a 50-year-old season ticket holder who's spending thousands with you. That is a very difficult tightrope to walk, right? And I think modeling out what we're hoping and trying to do is modeling out kind of what is the net impact of some of these things. How much do you gain versus how much do you risk losing? And based on that model or that equation, can you make that call to bet on the future, even if maybe it comes with a near-term sacrifice? I mean, if you're in Charlie's shoes, ownership doesn't want to see the bottom line get worse in the next couple of years, but you might have to make the argument that that is a necessary byproduct of making sure that the next 20 years are that much better. So it's really tricky, but for us, it's interesting and exciting.
Yeah, and necessary, right? I think there's a balance. I do think there's a way to be innovative in a sense to reach that new consumer. And I love what you said with, there's a certain window where you have a chance to really gain their fandom and become in a relationship, a consumer relationship as a team. And not really detract from what the folks that have been with us for 30 plus years now have experienced. There's definitely a balance. There's a couple examples that I'm proud of that our team has figured out from an in-game experience, especially. But it's also thinking about how do those different consumers, consume us and interact with us.
Right.
They're different, and sometimes in different spaces. So I think you can do a lot and be all in on maybe the younger up and coming consumers from a digital perspective on social, for example. But at the same time, know that we have so many different subsets of consumers that come to the game and they want that experience to be what they've come to know and expect. And look, again, blessed for the arena that we have. We built it with that in mind. It should be something that is first class and experience is high for us and everything. But it is different depending on where you go in the building based on who wants to be in that area. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
You might have more premium spaces of different levels than any building I've been in.
Yeah,
But it gives you
we've noticed that.
flexibility, right?
Yeah, it is. And again, I think premium is fun to define, right? Because we wanted the same premium-esque experience for anybody that comes in from the
Right.
top of the seats all the way down. That's not to say you don't unlock other opportunities by being closer to the court in a more lucrative space or what that might be. But again, that pressure of being something for everybody, I think, is important. So, well, let me leave you with this two-part question. Tackle it in any order you want. But as yeah, you all have plenty of intel. You're dealing with brands, you're dealing with properties, media rights holders, so on and so forth. Would love to understand and all of that. As you sit here today, what is your advice for folks that are running a brand, trying to figure out how they implement a proper sports partnership strategy or media strategy? And then the second part of that is do the reverse from a property perspective. People on my team and then others, what would be your advice as they try to develop business and also manage current business with partners?
Yeah. All right. Great two-part question. On the brand side, and this is kind of the deepest, best work I think we do with the Anheuser-Busches of the world, or um, the Oracles or Visas or Dr. Peppers, but it's strategy before tactics and be proactive rather than reactive. So you'll have to tell me if you don't like any of what I'm saying. But
I love it.
I think it's really laying out what is our strategy, what are we trying to achieve, where, and then thinking about what is the property mix that will help us achieve this, and let's go talk to them rather than it's so easy at a brand, especially a bigger, notable one, to just get inundated with all the proposals and to find yourself being reactive, or to find yourself kind of caught up in, well, we have this many deals that are still for another 2 years or 3 years, so I would love to change this, but I can't.
Sure.
You really need to map out, okay, where do we want to be 5 years from now? And then walk yourself back. Okay, what does that mean for decision making in the next few years? Who might we want that is already taken by one of our competitors, but let's be on the front end of when that's expiring, right? If you can really map it out, then you have an action plan that you can sell up and down your organization, and something that if you get that buy-in, then you can go do, rather than kind of the unfortunate chicken with your head cut off process that so often people just get kind of browbeaten into. On the property side, I'm probably even more at risk of you just cutting this, but if I were in this specific moment, especially, and I'm thinking about COVID and the pandemic and the uncertainty for our industry in the next year, two, I don't know.
Right.
Focus on the relationships more than the revenue. Now, I know that people in your shoes have a revenue number that you're measured against. And that's, so it's easier said than done. But I'm really thinking about when I were talking to Charlie or Alex or even the ownership group, I would definitely say that the incentives that too many people at properties are motivated by, which is typically just hit a number, make life harder for everyone, because you're just trying to get somebody in and get them in at the biggest number possible, instead of really crafting the best relationship that then you'll over deliver on, and then they'll come back and you start getting that snowball going, right? And so even in normal times, I think that's a big challenge. And sometimes we get hired by teams, this is pre-pandemic, to come in and let's look at our rate card, let's look at our partnership expectations, let's start to internally align on how we do this. I think it's more important than ever now with the pandemic that if your partnership number maybe does take a step back from what you would have expected, right, in a vacuum without a pandemic, as long as you maintain the relationships and they feel like compared to others, you guys are the ones listening and over delivering, you're going to tee yourself up, right, to survive whatever comes next. So again, easier said than done. but I think relationships over revenue is the maxim that we kind of preach with properties now more than ever.
Yeah, and I by the way, I think it's well said, and it's the right strategy. Blessed that our leadership, you called out Charlie and Alex, certainly Michael Ford, our chief sales officer too. We all have that mentality, and I think that's what's led us to some, frankly, the conversations have been in partnership with our partners, right? As we're coming up against some challenges, the relationships we've built allowed us to have some very transparent and honest and strong conversations that we got through together, and they weren't combative at all. We're all in this thing together. We have a business to run, but so do they. At the end of the day, relationships first and foremost, right? We are in it for the long term at the Magic, and I know hopefully every property. So right now we're prepared to go through some growing pains of that. But yeah, I think in a very odd sense, and I don't mean to be insensitive, there's a level of excitement in my area, right? Because we have the ability to be so innovative and pull on some opportunities that, in my eyes, will build the relationship even stronger than it is maybe prior to this pandemic, because we're showing that we are truly a partner. We've said forever, we're a partner, we're not a commodity. Now we get to show it, and I think that's coming to life here. But yeah, truly being invested in your partner and understanding, let's get them through this more than let's hit our number. We're all in. You couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to imply that Ford or Charlie or Alex aren't of that mind.
No.
You guys, the Milwaukee Bucks, as you know, probably the Chicago Cubs in baseball, there are a few organizations that we are just constantly referring to in terms of kind of best practices and the way they approach business, the way they approach partnerships, the way they approach their fan bases. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about those guys. I hope it didn't imply.
I appreciate that. No, I think you led right into the fact that they are of the right mindset, and I think you really summarized what I hope, and I know our mentality is what I hope everybody's is. So it's great. Well, Jeff, this has been incredible as always. I'm very fortunate to be able to take a lot of your time on a weekly basis and chat, and I'm glad we're able to do this and share our conversation with others.
No, I really appreciate it. And for anybody who does watch this and have like follow-up questions or want to connect, certainly, whether it's through LinkedIn or JT knows where to find me. I mean, would love to always broaden the network, and yeah, really appreciate it. I think you only said navigating like 3 times. So that's 75 cents, which buys me a Coke in 1994, maybe. That wasn't quite as profitable as I'd hoped, but
I kept it down. I know I have a certain expense to live within here. So once you throw out the number, but this is great, man. We really appreciate you. I hope people take you up on that. They should definitely get in touch with you. You've been a great thought partner. But thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.